Good evening, brethren. Tonight we're going to study Revelation 18, and is very much connected to the previous chapter. Like they go together for, as we saw in the previous chapter, it had to do with the great whore of Babylon, who she is, what she does. And now in chapter 18 comes her fall, her destruction, what is about to happen to her. And we even saw some images from the short animated film, I guess, um, iPad Go 2, in which when the false Messiah appears in the earth, then the church that is behind him is destroyed. So that's even like, well, to me, it was amazing to see it so clear in something that is secular. Um, in that short film, what they did was pretty much gather several prophecies and make them that animated short. And who knows what other information they had, which is what a lot of people thought that production had some inside knowledge. Um, but anyways, now in chapter 18, I begin with verse 1, and it says, "And after this, I saw another messenger coming down from the heavens, having great authority, and the earth was lightened from his steam. So through his honor, the whole world was receiving light. As we know, Yahushua said, I am the light. But then we read in Malachi 4:2 about the son of righteousness or son of justice. So one is the essence, the light, and the other is the lamp through which that light comes out into this reality or this world. So the Messiah as the light in the darkness could not understand, attain that light. So he rejected it and killed it. So Messiah was resurrected for his life. And when he was resurrected, he left the Ruach of light so that afterwards the lamp, the person that would receive that light to become the son of righteousness, would appear, who happens to be the messenger of Messiah. Yahushua's messenger is the one that um, is being mentioned here. And that's why we could substitute some of the words for son of righteousness. For what is happening right now is what happens when the sun comes out. But in this sense, it would be the messenger as the son of righteousness, bringing the knowledge or testimony of Yahushua HaMashiach, who happens to be the light. Also, the word esteem or honor, splendor, has to do with the word in Hebrew, kabod, which is a word that has to do with the honor of a king. So that also shows that the messenger is the one that would be king through the kingship that Messiah left in this world for us to receive through our faith in him. So, and after this, I saw another messenger coming down from the heavens, having great authority, and the earth was lightened from his steam. And he cried with a mighty voice, saying, Babel the great is fallen, is fallen. Babel the great is fallen. Here's a comment. So let's go to Isaiah 21:9 for a second. And see this, a chariot of men coming with a pair of horsemen. And he spoke up and said, Babel is fallen, is fallen. And all the carved images of her mighty ones he has broken to the ground. This is an important verse actually, because as I explain or say a lot when I have to speak about the whore of Babylon, I mentioned another theory held by some regarding the whore of Babylon being Jerusalem. As I always explain, the whore of Babylon, it is a spirit that has rule over several cities of the world. Started in Babel, then it went to um, well, even the Greek Empire, and then Rome, and that is where it remains through the Vatican, and is trying to control the world through Jerusalem. For they all know that that is the main land of this world. So since the Almighty chose that land, the enemy wants to take that land, for the enemy wants to be like the Most High, as he said in Isaiah 14. So even though if we go to Jerusalem nowadays, sadly, we will find stores selling idols right on top of the mountain. So we could say it fits. The idols that they sell over there come from the Vatican. They come from Rome and that church, that doctrine. So on the other hand, in comparison to Jerusalem, if we go to the Vatican, which I haven't, but I did go to Jerusalem, I have the blessing to go. When it comes to Rome, I haven't been there, but I have friends who have been there. And also, you could also, through internet, we can almost go there virtually. So you can see how there are images, idols all over the place, all over the city. Wherever you go, you will find an idol of a saint or a planet, because sometimes, well, what they did was change the planets for the saints, or who they call the saints. So the Vatican is filled with images, filled with idols. So what is being said here fits what that church is, because of all the congregations or churches who claim to believe in the Messiah, the Catholic Church is the one that upholds idolatry the most, or at least in the most clear way, because there's idolatry in the other Christian doctrines, but it's kind of hidden, in the sense that they worship either themselves or their success or their money or their pastor. But in Catholic Church, they worship a whole different person, Mary. They worship images themselves, like literal statues, and they claim they don't worship the image, that they worship what the image represents, but that is exactly what the Almighty said they shouldn't do. So idolatry is clear in Catholicism. So this is something that fits with it very well. And he spoke up and said, Babel is fallen, and all the carved images of her mighty ones he has broken to the ground. All the carved images of her mighty ones he has broken to the ground, which is going to happen soon over there and everywhere where there may be an image, not just those idols. All idols will be destroyed. So going back to Revelation, and he cried with a mighty voice, for he is the voice of Yahweh, who is mighty, saying, Babel the great is fallen, is fallen. Babel means confusion. So this is a great event, for confusion will finally fall when the truth is revealed in the clearest way. Once the light shines, as in the first verse, then all confusion will disappear, for darkness will disappear once the light is revealed. The true light, of course, not the physical one, but the spiritual one. So that's why Babel, confusion will fall. Also, as we know, Babel fell when Nimrod was building the tower. So Nimrod, the rebel, as the name translates, decided to build a tower to go up to heaven and take over. There were three groups of people. They had different things in mind. They were all rebellious and evil. Um, but the point was to enter the heavens and take over. What is amazing is that the Almighty realized that they were going to be able to do so because of how they were united on that same idea. So that was going to make it possible. That on one hand shows how powerful it is to be united as a people. But in this case, it's sad that they were all united together against the Most High. So since they were going to be able to enter the heavens, Yahweh sent his malachim, his angels, to change the languages and change the Hebrew that was spoken till that point into 70 different languages, which then became a bunch more. So Yahweh destroyed the tower. And after that, since that moment, the rebellious humans and the Nephilim, the hybrids, have been working still to bring that plan of Nimrod to reality. And is what they are doing right now with the New World Order, the new normal, and the Great Reset, and all of that, that they are using those words to bring the people to accept a change in their lives, um, to enter the world of Satan, pretty much. But as we know, as scripture told us, it will only last for 3.5 years. So also, as we have been reading, we already read the 7 last plagues, and then comes right afterwards the revelation, 17 and 18, of the fall of Babylon, of the fall of the great whore, which has to do with the fact that the world by that time would have been already fooled by the false Messiah. So since the world would have accepted the false Messiah, the abomination of desolation, the image of the beast, of Revelation 13, then they won't need that church anymore. So they will destroy it. Yahweh will use the same beast to destroy the great whore, just like he allowed the dogs to eat Jezebel, for it was a shadow of this event. So just like Yahweh brought down the Tower of Babel, Yahweh will bring down the government of Babel, the confusion, the New World Order. So, and he cried with a mighty voice, saying, Babel the great is fallen, and has become a dwelling place of demons, a haunt for every unclean spirit, and a haunt for every unclean and hated bird. So, as we see also in the prophets, for instance, in Isaiah 34, for instance, this in verse 5, for my sword shall be drenched in the heavens. Look, it comes down on Edom. Edom, Asaph, brother of Jacob, has 2 names, just like Jacob. We could say it's not the same. For Israel was a name given by the Almighty. Edom was a name given by other people, for he was red. But the fact that 2 names are used for him is important, because the descendants of Asaph, also called Edom, became 2 different people in our time. A great part of them are Rome, as the Jewish people testify. A great part of them became Rome. They went to live at Kittim, as we see in the book of Yashar, and other parts that eventually became what we now know as Rome. And even in the time of Messiah, the Romans, the Roman Empire, they are said to be descendants of Edom. Edom means red, and the Romans claim to be descendants of Mars, the god of Mars, the god of war, which in Judaism happens to be Samael, who happens to be the Malach of Asaph. So there are connections everywhere, even when we include the Roman mythology. So the other part, the other group, are a bunch of descendants of Edom who were converted by Yohanan Irkano, were converted to Judaism around about 150 years before Messiah. About 150 years before Messiah, a great part of Edomites were converted to Judaism. And according to a Jewish encyclopedia, the great majority of nowadays Judaism or Jewish people happen to actually be descendants of Asaph. All others are descendants of the Khazars and other people. So what are now called Jewish people, most of them are not really Israelites. And that is very important to understand, because there is a lot of confusion regarding that point that causes a lot of people to fight with each other. not understanding what is really going on and how they well claim it's politics and a bunch of other things, but it's just the substitution of a people to take over a nation and, if possible, the world, as they're some of them trying. So, and just in case, you can read the protocols of the elders of Zion, which they claim is false and it's a fraud, and a judge already decided it and all of that. And they even have to write that on every copy of that book, because if you read it, it will convince you for sure of what is happening, what has happened. And since we are living it, I don't think anybody with common sense can read that book and say that it was made up in the time that it was. And they already knew everything that was going to happen. Seems prophetical, but it's not. And that's the point. So verse 5, as I was saying, for my sword shall be drenched in the heavens. That is amazing, because the heavens are where the Malachim are. Yahweh said in Haggai chapter 2 that this time he would shake heavens and earth. For the first time, he only shook the earth in the time of Noah when he brought the flood. But this time, the coming of the Son of Man will be like the days of Noah, and he will shake the heavens and the earth. And we see part of it here. My sword shall be drenched in the heavens, for Yahweh will not only destroy the evil humans, but also the evil angels, as we see part of it in Revelation 12, when Michael takes Satan out of heaven with the third of his angels. So, for my sword shall be drenched in the heavens. Look, it comes down on Edom, which, I repeat, part of it is Rome, another part is the false Jewish people. And on the people of my curse for judgment. On the people of my curse for judgment. The sword of Yahweh shall be filled with blood. It shall be made overflowing with fatness, and with the blood of lambs and goats and the fat of kidneys of rams, using the analogy of the sacrifices in the temple with what is going to happen to the nations of the earth during the Great Tribulation. Now, the point or the reason why I came to this chapter was not it. If we go to verse 13 and 14, and thorns shall come up in its palaces, nettles and brambles in its strongholds, and it shall be a home for jackals and a courtyard for ostriches. So it's talking about how those places which have been the delight of many, and many of the world have seen those places have the most pure on planet Earth, well, what they call planet on this earth. They think those places like the Vatican and Catholic churches or other places where there are idols, they think they are special, and there are a bunch of tourists that go and they are in awe of those places. They feel even different in those places because there are spirits in those places. And the people think that those places are good, special, set apart, pure. Yet the Almighty tells us that they are filled with demons. So when the millennium comes, reality will be clear, for the light will shine. So all darkness will disappear, and therefore all illusion. So those places that were filled with demons will be clearly seen to be filled with demons. Also, through the fact that they will be filled with beasts, with certain animals that are represented, that in scriptures are impure because they represent fallen angels. So since the fallen angels or demons will be in those places from then on, it will also be filled with certain types of animals. So the Almighty tells us of those animals in those places to show that they will be filled with demons. Verse 14 says, and the wild beasts of the desert shall also meet with the jackals, and the shaggy goat call to its companion. The night creature, this verse, the night creature shall also settle there, and shall find for herself a place of rest. Herself. That night creature is the mother of demons, and is pretty much the spirit that is worshipped through the title Queen of Heaven, or the other titles that they give in idolatry to Mary, who is not the mother of the Messiah. The mother of the Messiah's name was Miriam. She did not remain a virgin after giving birth to Messiah. She died like a regular person and went to paradise for sure. She's having the greatest time of her life because she is alive before the Father. Yet she is not to be worshipped. She is not the way. She's not the light. Messiah, Yahushua, whom she had the pleasure to give birth to, is the light, is the way, and is the one we must see as the example and follow in order to get to the Father. So the night creature is the mother of demons. And if we go to the Hebrew, verse 14, it says here, Lilith, Lamed Yud Tav, which is said to be the first female to be created, who did not want to uh, be subjected to Adam. So she rebelled and was kicked out of creation and decided to become the mother of demons through her union with Samael. And that is why Yahweh in Genesis looks at Adam and says it is not good for Adam to be alone after he had said that all things were good. And not only that, when Adam receives Eve from his side to show that they would become one, unlike what would have been with Lilith, for they could not be one, for they were both from different parts of soil. In this case, Yahweh takes Eve from Adam's side in order to present her to him as his wife. And that's why he says, so after Yahweh had said that everything was good regarding his creation, verse 18 of chapter 2 says, and Yahweh Elohim said, it is not good for the man to be alone. I am going to make a helper for him as his counterpart. And from the ground Yahweh Elohim formed every beast of the field and every bird of the heavens and brought them to the man to see what he would call them, and whatever the man called each living being, that was its name. So the man gave names. Well, it continues, but then it says, verse 23, and the man said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. So if this is now, could be taken as there was something earlier different. There was something different earlier, which was not bone of his bones and flesh of his flesh. So he had to say this time, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one is called Isha. It says woman, because she was taken out of men. When it comes to the word in English, is like a man with a womb. Woman, that is the point. It is a human with a womb. That is the point of the word woman. But in Hebrew is Ish, the man, and Isha, the woman, which is a proof that the first language ever was Hebrew, because Hebrew is the only language in which this verse makes sense. As in, she's going to be called Isha because she was taken from the Ish. All other languages have a difference in the way they call man and female, or man and woman. And actually, in this case, one could say it is very similar, but we all obviously know English is not one of the languages of the beginning of this creation. That is clearly known. And the connection there is also obviously based on what we see in the original Hebrew. So this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one is called Isha because she was taken out of Ish. So now going back to Isaiah, I just wanted to show this because since they don't teach of this spirit, they have some issues with the translation. So when you read verse 14 of Isaiah 34, you will find different terms that they will use to translate this name. Now, the name is connected to Halloween. I mean, a way of kind of like certain spirits, demons, or even certain animals whine or howl during the night. So the term has to do with some type of crying, annoying crying or whining of a demon or a spirit. But also the letters that form the name can be connected to the term Laila, which is night. So also showed within the name that it is a spirit of the night. And all of that because that spirit, that entity is clearly connected to the fall of Babel. And that is why we read here, and has become a dwelling place of demons and a hunt for every unclean spirit and a hunt for every unclean and hated bird. So we see the mix of animals and demons or spirits. In Isaiah, it only speaks of animals, and it mentions the mother of the demons. Now in Revelation 18, it says, and has become a dwelling place for demons. Demons are a type of entity that has certain characteristics of humans and other characteristics of spirits. For instance, they need to eat and drink, not like humans. The point is that they need something to sustain themselves. They need to take, for instance, faith, fear from people. They need to take to make people worry so that they can feed off that energy. They need to make people be anxious and all of that. And also when people worship them, they give them wine and sacrifices, and they also feed off the energy or what the sacrifices emit to the heavens through the smoke and other things like the smell of the wine and other things. So demons are a type, an entity that doesn't have a body like a spirit, but it needs to eat like a human and therefore dies. So demons die. And in fact, in Judaism, it said that the punishment of Lilith was to have 100 of her children die every day. And it is said that one of the ways in which she continues to create or have these entities come through her is through some night emissions. For instance, the succubus and the incubus, or the incubi as they call it. Yeah, in English, incubi, succubi, or succubus, which are spirits. The one who, the one which is called incubi is the one that puts the seed in females during night, and the other one is the one which takes the seed from males during the night. When a person is spiritually dirty, then pretty much can attract those entities so that those entities can feed off their sexual energy during the night. I'm not saying that every time that, for instance, a man has a nocturnal emission, it has to do with one of those spirits. Not at all, for we find it in the scriptures that that also happens because of nature, depending on the person, of course, and the reasons. But I'm just saying so that I'm not misinterpreted. The point is, the demons that feed of sexual energy come from that same spirit, and they can die. Demons can die. And also another thing of demons is that they have um, a lot of knowledge. In fact, the word demon from the Greek actually is connected to entities that have a lot of knowledge. They even would call uh, gods, what they call now gods, they would call them also demons, for they would seek them for knowledge. And there's even in the New Covenant a part that is also translated in different ways, because if they were to translate it literally, people would kind of freak out or find it weird. Because when Paul went to a place where they were very religious, a way of interpreting one of the verses that are found in that context is that they were really faithful to demons. They really believed in demons. So Paul knew that they would be able to believe in the true Elohim, the Almighty One. So that sounds kind of weird. But the point is that when we know the true mighty one, we know that those false entities are either demons, fallen angels, or evil spirits. But to those people, They are Elohim, they are God. So if we were to tell them strictly or straight up that they are demons, they will feel very offended for lack of knowledge. So going back to the verse, and has become a dwelling place for demons. It mentions the demons that come from and are under Samael through Lilith, and a hunt for every unclean spirit, because demons and unclean spirits are different. The unclean spirits came from the union of angels and humans during the time of Noah, when the Nephilim were on this earth, when the giants were on this earth. They, the time of Noah, and Noah just entered the so during the time of Noah, the angels came down and they had sex with the, or well, some would say that it wasn't sex, but they just mixed their DNA, and they had hybrids who happened to be gigantic. And then the the angels that came down were punished to be in hell, and their children would die after 500 years or so. And after they would die, since their spirits were abominations, for they were not humans nor angels, their spirits could not go up nor down. So they would remain on earth as unclean spirits. And those are the ones that um, act like they are family members. Sometimes, not all the time, Yahweh would allow or can allow a family member to appear in a dream or give shalom to somebody if they are in pain or whatever, as he has done through scriptures also. But many times, a lot of people, when they visit mediums and all of that, they are being fooled by this kind of unclean spirits who have been on this earth for thousands of years. So they know people and they know how to fool them. And they know their family members also very well, even more if they would practice witchcraft or even talk to mediums and all of that, which is pretty much the same. So it has become a dwelling place for demons, and a hunt for evil and clean spirits, and a hunt for every unclean and hated bird. Unclean bird. The birds are the angels. It is not talking about actual animals. It is talking about the fallen angels, for they are unclean and hated. So we have demons, unclean spirits, and fallen angels. Those are the three types of entities that are against humans. The demons, since Samael became, well, the one on the left, the demons are under Samael. The unclean spirits pretty much under the fallen angels that came during the time of Noah, as Shamhaza and Azazel, who happens to be Abaddon, as we have said in other studies. And the fallen angels are under Lucifer. So those three Satans have under them a different type of entity over whom they rule. Then verse 3, because all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her whoring. This is the reason why Babel the Great is fallen. Because all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her whoring. Pretty much her whoring, which causes wrath from the Almighty. That's why Yahweh will make this happen. Because all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her whoring, and the sovereigns of the earth have committed whoring with her. And the merchants of the earth have become rich through the power of her.
That's a new word, riotous, riot.
Yeah, I was just looking that word up. It means public disorder, involving public disorder.
Which is actually amazing, because you see all the riots going on nowadays everywhere, all the protests, and how they are supporting that and paying for that and making people go and protest, and even pay for people to go and destroy those protests by infiltrating even police or other people as if they were people protesting. So that is crazy, because that is part of the confusion that they are trying to promote. Yeah, that is uh, interesting, because that is something we are seeing a lot nowadays. Riots all over the place, And that is something also, I repeat, that the system is supporting, because they are using it as an excuse to bring the people even lower. So, which is also found in the book that I was mentioning, the protocols of the elders of Zion. So, verse 4, and I heard another voice from the heaven saying, come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues. So, the first voice, that of a malach who had light like that of the sun, pretty much as it shows the first verse, who calls for Babel has fallen. And I heard another voice from the heavens saying, come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues. And it has a comment, well, a lot of verses. I'm not going to go to them, but you guys can do it later. For there are a lot, and you know that if I go, I will take forever to speak about each and every one of them. So this is something that we are working on very hard, right? When we go to our family members and tell them about the falsehood in which we were born and raised, and sometimes it creates issues, sadly. But it is written that we needed to come out of the confusion created by Babel, by the great whore of Babylon. So, and I heard another voice from the heavens saying, come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues. That is very important. Lest you share in her sins, as sadly, when, like, for instance, you tell a person that she shouldn't be, or he or she shouldn't be in a certain religion for this and that reason that we find in scriptures clearly, and that person decides to remain there, not come out of it, then that person knowingly begins to share with their sins, because they're pretty much saying they agree with whatever they are doing wrong and they accept it. So that's why it says, come out of her, my people, lest you share of her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues. So since they will reject the two witnesses and accept the falsehood, as they have been doing, then they will have to go through the plagues as well. But the Almighty doesn't want that. And it is amazing that he keeps saying it even to this point, when it comes to the book of Revelation, the many already died. But obviously, this was written 2,000 years ago. So the Almighty repeats it so that everybody may have, well, an opportunity, in the sense of whoever reads this may study himself or herself and the doctrine in which they are, so that they may come to a decision of if it is what the Almighty is telling us in scriptures, in the sense of his will or the will of the great whore, which has everybody drunk with the wine of idolatry. So, and I heard another voice from the heavens saying, come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues, because her sins have piled up to reach the heavens. Because her sins have piled up to reach the heavens, and Elohim has remembered her unrighteousness. Because her sins have piled up to reach the heavens. That is something that we see also in the time of Sodom and Gomorrah, also in the time of the slavery in Egypt. There were so many people suffering that their cries went up to the heavens, and there was no way that the Almighty could ignore it anymore. So he had to come down and do something about it. So what he's saying here is that it's coming to that moment in time when the sins have been so much that the Almighty can just no longer keep on waiting for everybody to repent. He has to come and do something about it. Otherwise, even the righteous ones will either be destroyed, or some would end up not righteous anymore, as we see in scriptures regarding, if it wasn't because Yahweh shortens time, even the elected, even the chosen few would be lost through the work that the enemy is preparing for, it will be so deceitful that a lot of people sadly will fall for it. So because her sins have piled up to reach the heavens, and Elohim has remembered her unrighteousness, render to her as she indeed did render, that is, an eye for an eye, true justice. For they did not accept the mercy of Messiah as the lawyer, so they deserve justice. And justice means eye for an eye. Midah can get midah in Hebrew, which is measure by measure. Render to her as she indeed did render, and repay her double according to her works. Since Yahweh is good, he pays double. But they did evil works, so they will receive double the evil that they did on their own heads. So, as I always say, also the fact that Yahweh is good not only is good for those who receive the goodness, but also when it comes to him doing vengeance against those who have hurt those who he chose. So what I mean is that even justice has to do with his goodness, because if he didn't do justice against the wicked ones, then he wouldn't be good. That wouldn't be good, of course. So render to her as she indeed did render, and repay her double according to her works. In the cup which she has mix for her double. So just as she confused the whole world, now she will be confused for eternity when she realizes where she will end up and remain. For hell is not only pain, torture, as I think most people see it, but the scripture tells us all the time regarding confusion and shame. That those are two of the main tortures of hell: confusion and shame, eternal shame. So they will have double for what they have done to the whole world. In the cup which she has mixed for her double. As much as she esteemed herself and lived riotously, she lives and does riots all the time. So I find it interesting here actually, because that is the first time that I at least see this word being used with the whore of Babylon. And like I said, it is perfect for our time because we're seeing it in our time. However, let me see how they write it in the other translation. Luxury and sensually. So I find it like a bit different than the riots that we're seeing nowadays, but that it's another type, of course. In this case, he's talking about being imprudent pretty much in public, acting like a whore when she claims to be the example, where she claims to be a virgin, being a whore by the way that she teaches and guides the people of the world who follow her, the whore of Babylon. But yeah, I repeat, the confusion that religion and politics and a lot of things have caused, and all the riots going all around the world, I find interesting that they chose that word, plus the sensuality of it, meaning that she uses faith to make people commit adultery and fornication, spiritually speaking, which is idolatry. So it says, as much as she esteemed herself and lived sensually, luxuriously, so much torture and grief give to her. So as much luxury as she enjoyed, for she is dressed in pearls, precious stones, gold, silver, now she will receive the other part, the other extreme. So much torture and grief give to her. For instance, the Vatican, and not only they, but other entities in the world, have enough wealth to end hunger, for instance. and they even would be able to cure most, if not all, diseases if they wanted to, for they have the knowledge, but they keep it hidden, for they do not want people to multiply. They want to destroy and they want to depopulate so that they can control easier. So imagine, with all the power and the ability to actually take pain from the world, yet because they are greedy, selfish, they actually add more pain with that power that they have. Imagine how much pain they deserve, how much judgment will come upon them for using all the good things that the Almighty allowed them to have to actually cause evil to his creation and even to his people. So much torture and grief give to her, because in her heart she says, I see as sovereignness, and I am not a widow, and I do not see mourning at all. So she claims that she won't ever be destroyed. She claims she is a queen. Like I said, they call her the queen of heaven. And I am not a widow, which is interesting because it has to do, well, there are several ways in which we could put this. For instance, the fact that when it comes to Lilith, she's married to Samael, and Samael happens to be death, or death came from it. So obviously she's a widow, yet she doesn't accept it. But there are other ways to put it. The point at the end is that the Almighty already killed her husband through the sacrifice of Mashiach. Satan is done. But she claims that she still remains in power because she's not a widow. So the fact that she's a widow will be clear once everything that must happen in our time will happen. So when they kill the two witnesses, finally everything that has been in the dark, like the fact that Satan already fell from the favor yet has not fallen from heaven, once it happens, then all these things will begin to make sense. Even the fact that she indeed is a widow, or the fact that the Pope is not as humble as they claim, or the fact that the idols have demons, that will be clear. No longer will people say, no, that idol or that image is pure, is a saint, it has given me a miracle. No longer will people be so blind to say those things. They will finally be able to see that they were being fooled so clearly. So it says, because in her heart, and as we know, the heart is deceitful above all things, according to the book of Jeremiah. Because in her heart, she says, I sit as sovereignness, and I am not a widow, and I do not see mourning at all. She does not expect to see death, to see destruction. It says, verse 8, because of this, her plagues shall come in one day. Because of this, her plagues shall come in one day. So since she has been ruling for so long, and like I have explained also in other times, when Eliyahu came, he brought judgment against the priests of Baal, even though they were priests of this whore, of the great whore of Babylon. They were priests of Asherah, yet they were not mentioned in the execution. So that happened to show us that the judgment against the evil spirit of confusion would happen until the very end of time. Even when Eliyahu came back as Yohanan, the immerser, or John the Baptist, he was killed by a new version of Jezebel, the same person that had promised him that she would cut his head, and it happened to Yohanan. So we see the continuation. Yet during the time of Messiah, it is Rome who has even power to kill Messiah himself. So we see how the great whore has thought to be more and more and more powerful with time, because she has been allowed to do more and more and more evil. So if Jezebel couldn't kill Eliyahu, but then because of the dance of the daughter of Herodias, or the woman that Herod was with, who happened to be Jezebel once again, when she's able to cut his head, the spirit of confusion thinks that she's gaining more power, because what she couldn't do then, she did 2,000 years ago. And then through 2,000 years, gaining more and more control through falsehood, even using the testimony of Messiah, the scriptures, has caused her to think that she won't ever see her falling. So it says, because of this, her plague shall come in one day. So it has been so long that Yahweh will make it so quick to make it very clear to her. Because of this, her plague shall come in one day, death and mourning and scarcity of food. Scarcity of food. As we know, there will be hunger through the third seal, which will multiply for sure until the very end. For that hunger or scarcity of food was represented by the 7 years of hunger also in Egypt, with the dream of the cows that Pharaoh had. 7 good years, 7 bad years. Those 7 bad years represented the last week of Daniel, which is 7 years, mentioned in Daniel 9. So hunger is something that will be happening during the last 7 years. Mainly hunger for the truth, hunger for the spirit, when they realize that nothing that they have followed is true or helps. So because of this, her plague shall come in one day, death and mourning and scarcity of food. And she shall be burned up with fire, because Yahweh Elohim, who judges her, is mighty. All of this, we have been actually also reading it on Mondays, but in the Spanish study, because we're reading Ezekiel when Yahweh speaks to the great whore, but through the nation of Tyre. So that is another point that is important, that there are so many connections with Ezekiel 28, Ezekiel 27, with Revelation 18, and even Revelation 17, to show that Yahweh is speaking to a spirit, not to a nation, not to a physical place. It is talking to a spirit that has worked through leaders, religious leaders, who have deceived the whole world pretty much. So once again, I'm not going to go to Ezekiel, because then I will read a lot of verses, because there are a lot of connections. So I just tell you so that if you want to read all those connections, they are found in Ezekiel 27 and 28. And I repeat, there speaks of Tyre, yet here speaks of Babel. So 2 different places or kingdoms, yet saying the same thing. And as we know in Ezekiel 28, Yahweh speaks to Satan as the king of Tyre, like the dragon or the beast that the great whore is on. So because of this, her plague shall come in one day, death and mourning and scarcity of food. And she shall be burned up with fire, because Yahweh Elohim, who judges her, is mighty. And the sovereigns of the earth, who committed whoring and lived, here we go again, riotously, with her shall weep and mourn over her, when they see the smoke of her burning. The sovereigns of the earth, who committed whoring and lived sensually with her, which I think connects a lot with being a whore, and what that actually represents spiritually. Of course, we need to understand that that sensuality that is mentioned is referring to spiritual, in the sense that it has fooled everybody, just like we know the influence that a woman has over a man in pretty much every way. So the way that Yahweh speaks of this whore is that great influence of a female over a man, but in terms of a great and powerful church that has full humanity and led them astray, thinking that she is the true virgin or the true wife, when she is instead the worst whore. So the sovereigns of the earth who committed whoring and lived sensually with her shall weep and mourn over her when they see the smoke of her burning, when they see the smoke of her burning, standing at a distance for fear of her torture, saying, woe, woe to the great city Babel, the mighty city, because your judgment has come in 1 hour. Your judgment has come in 1 hour. So we saw that Yahweh would make it happen in 1 day in verse 8, and then we see that he brought it in 1 hour, which is interesting because it would be as if the Almighty, well, in the sense that from the perspective of those people, it was 1 hour. Yeah, my point is kind of backwards, because when we see that the scripture says that to Yahweh 1 day is like 1,000 years, yet in this case, Yahweh says 1 day and it happens in an hour, in the sense that he's bringing this judgment, when it comes to the judgment of Babel, really quickly. For us, we have seen the whole of the plagues of the seals and the trumpets and the bowls of wrath will happen in 7 years. Yet here, the fact that it will be destroyed really quickly is mentioned a lot. So because of this, her plague shall come in 1 day, death and mourning and scarcity of food, and she shall be burned up with fire, because Yahweh Elohim who judges her is mighty, and the sovereigns of the earth who committed whoring and lived riotously with her shall weep and mourn over her when they see the smoke of her burning, standing at a distance for fear of her torture, for fear of her torture, not knowing that that same judgment comes for them afterwards, saying, woe, woe, the great city Babel, the mighty city, because your judgment has come in 1 hour. And they wouldn't be crying for her. They would pretty much would be scared for themselves, because they would kind of know inside what is coming for them. And also is like a man who has paid a woman for sex. And then if something happens to that woman, that man, well, like I have said, obviously there are men who do fall in love with uh, prostitutes, and obviously there are prostitutes who repent, but we are talking about the great whore of Babylon that is a prostitute who doesn't want to repent and likes being a whore. So that's a different type of woman. So in that point, in that relation of a man who pays for sex, that man doesn't care about the woman. If something happens to that woman, it really doesn't matter. What matters to him is if that which happens to her may affect him, as in something that she may pass to him, or that he won't have the pleasure of sex with her again, but he's only thinking about himself. And that will be the point with these people who have made so much money, so much wealth using falsehood through that church. So, standing at a distance for fear of her torture, saying, woe, woe, the great city Babel, the mighty city, because your judgment has come in 1 hour. And the merchants of the earth weep and mourn over her. The merchants, all the money that they will lose. And the merchants of the earth weep and mourn over her, because no one buys their merchandise anymore. Because no one buys their merchandise anymore. And he's going to mention several types of merchandise. But when it comes to faith, for instance, nobody will ever buy again the falsehood that they were selling. Nobody. And also, we see in the new covenant when, for instance, Paul took out was taking out demons and preaching against falsehood and idolatry, and the people who made a living selling idols were angry and had to make him go away, for their businesses were falling. So those who make money by selling idols or anything of that sort will hate it when the truth is revealed, and when that church, which makes them so much money, will be taken out. But the Vatican, if you investigate a little, you will see that the Vatican has invested even in the porn industry and many other things, and even in sex trafficking and child trafficking. And I know those are big words, but there's enough evidence if you go and look a little bit for it. I even, in one of my videos of the song The Apostasy, at the very end of the video, the long version, I even include the order for the arrest of Bergoglio, who happens to be the Pope right now, for that type of trafficking. So they make a lot of money in many ways, not just the ways that people know and see or are told through TV. So merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and pearls and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and all citron wood and every object of ivory and every object of most precious wood and bronze and iron and marble. Pretty much all the precious things that were valuable in the time of Yohanan, so that we may understand that the whore and all merchants would be involved with her in all sorts of merchandise, all sorts of products, different types of products. And obviously we can also connect each of those things to something. For instance, as we know, Scarlet is connected to sin and also royalty, like the fact that she would sell leadership. When she would support a leader, a political leader, then all the Catholics would support that leader, for instance. Silk connected also with the luxury in which they are accustomed to live, plus silk, the way it comes from a worm, and the worm is also connected to Jacob, as we see in the prophecies, as what they have taken from his people. Purple is also connected to royalty. As we know, the whore is dressed in purple and scarlet. Purple is the mix of blue and red. Blue, like the water of life. Red, like, well, judgment. And the mix of first and last, as mercy and judgment bring King of Kings and Sovereign of Sovereigns. Of course, they take all those things from the scriptures and twist them in order to fool others, as the fact that they use the testimony to make people worship Jesus, for instance, who happens to not be the Messiah, for the name of the Messiah is Yahushua, and Jesus has an image. Yahushua has a body, but doesn't have an image that we may worship or that we should follow or keep in our minds on all of that. The image is the word. That's why he is the word. In the beginning was the word, and the word was with Elohim, and the word was Elohim. So the word is the image that we must look up to, meaning read his words and follow him and obey him. It's not about what his eyes look like, how his nose look like, and all of that. And that is the reason why he didn't come as an attractive person in the physical sense, so that they wouldn't follow him for that, as we see in Isaiah 53. Obviously, spiritually is the greatest, but that's also the contrast of the reality of the spirit and the reality of the flesh, which is an illusion. And that's why he who is the greatest and the most beautiful, when he entered this world, was seen as the opposite. That's why also when he comes, as he said, would come as a thief in the night and other things. So, and it said merchandise of gold and silver. Like I would say, gold is connected to the kingdom, the chosen few. Silver is connected to the many, to the people, to the sand, in the sense of Yaakov being promised that his children would be like the sand on the sea, or also the dust of the earth. And I say that because there's a part where it says in scriptures that silver was so common as the dust of the earth at a certain point in time. So silver is connected to the many and to Israel multiplying like the dust of the earth. Then precious stones is connected to the apostles, as we see in Revelation. Obviously, I'm saying the positive things, yet the enemy has used those to sell not only the physical precious stones, but also sell idolatry of saints as if they were the apostles. For instance, they have tried to fool the chosen few and the many, and etc. etc. So, verse 13, and cinnamon and incense and fragrant oil and frankincense and wine and oil and fine flour and wheat and cattle and sheep and horses and carriages and bodies and lives of men. This is interesting for what I was saying earlier regarding their trafficking, human trafficking. And look how it says they even merchandise bodies and lives of men. For we know also, if we study a little bit, that they still have slaves. Obviously, they keep it hidden. And even sadly, a lot of people live as slaves, even though they don't have that title on them. So we see all the merchandise mentioned here to show how the great whore, who, if she's spoken of as a woman, is because she represents a group of people. And when it comes to the spiritual, a group of people who claim to believe. So it is a church. Yet we see that she's involved in selling and buying, which is interesting because we know that those who get the mark of the beast will be able to sell and buy if they have the mark. So we see the connection of religion and economy. And interesting how we saw here that they will be hungry even after they will be told that if they get the mark, that if they get this and that, they will not hunger, they will receive everything they need, they will be able to buy and sell. Hunger will still strike the earth. They won't be able to escape the judgment of the Almighty through having money, through printing bills or adding numbers in a computer. So we see all the merchandise in which, well, she was involved, which is also connected with when Yahushua came and he entered the temple and he saw everybody selling and buying animals in order to sacrifice them. So they got too focused on selling animals and they lost the vision of the reason for the animal to be brought to the temple. They were focused on buying and selling, making money. So that's why Yahushua was angry and he turned the tables. So the same thing here, but in a greater scale, for that was happening in the temple. Now this became something of 2,000 years throughout the whole world. So verse 14, and the fruit that you're being longed for has gone from you, and the fruit that you're being longed for has gone from you, and all your riches and splendor are lost to you, and you shall find them no more, not at all. So those who have lived in luxury, sensually, both physical and spiritual, seeking only the desires of the flesh and worshiping demons, themselves, money, power, they will end up on the other side, being poor, hungry, in pain, lost, confused, in shame, humiliated, etc. And the fruit that you're being longed for has gone from you, and all your riches and splendor are lost to you, and you shall find them no more, not at all. This is important, and that is one of the reasons why they would forbid people from reading the scriptures. They would not allow people to read scriptures because they would find out that they will be judged, that they will fall. But if they take scriptures from us, then fear will enter people thinking that they will control the world forever, that they are untouchable. Yet the Almighty tells us, don't worry, I will get rid of them. They are done. And they won't get there up there and get that power ever again. This reality was for them to be revealed. Yahweh made this reality for evil people to reveal themselves as such. When Yahweh, hid himself, then those who are evil came out thinking that he doesn't exist, so that when he reveals himself, they may not exist anymore, in the sense of being taken out of the existence in which we will be, the reality that we will live. So, and the fruit that you're being longed for has gone from you, and all your riches and splendor are lost to you, and you shall find them no more, not at all. The merchants of these, those who became rich by her, shall stand at a distance for fear of her torture, weeping and mourning, and saying, woe, woe, the great city has this, the great city that was dressed in fine linen and purple and scarlet. Look at that, because when we go to Revelation 19, verse 7, let us be glad and rejoice and give him praise, for the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his wife prepared herself. And to her it was given to be dressed in fine linen. So she's not dressed in fine linen yet. She looks like a Gentile, but Yahweh will raise her up and put her in the highest place and dress her in fine linen, which is what covers the great whore right now, in the sense of the great power and splendor that people see in her. Yahweh will take it from her and give it to the wife of Mashiach, the true congregation. Let us be glad and rejoice and give him praise, for the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his wife prepared herself, and to her it was given to be dressed in fine linen, clean and bright. For the fine linen is the righteousness of the set apart ones. So we see here, going back, that it says, and saying, woe, woe, the great city that was dressed in fine linen and purple and scarlet. Once again, purple and scarlet is very easy to, if you write purple and scarlet church, then, I mean, it should be very easy to find or clear to see. Scarlet and purple, and look at their uniform. So, and look also in the middle, we find this, which is how the high priest would dress. And maybe, most likely, they are making reference in this website or connecting it to the Israelite priesthood. However, the connection that I see, and the reason why I mention it, is because the great whore tries to copy everything that the Almighty does. So if the Almighty used those colors for his high priest, then Satan would use the same colors trying to copy everything. Just like we saw with the fact that since the wife of the Messiah will be dressed in fine linen, then he dressed his, the enemy dressed his wife, the whore, in fine linen, so that she would feel special. So it says, woe, woe to the great city that was dressed in fine linen and purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls. For in 1 hour such great riches was laid waste. For in 1 hour such great riches was laid waste. And every shipmaster and every passenger and sailors and as many as worked the sea for their living stood at a distance. They will maintain their distance, thinking that by having this distance, the plague won't fall on them. And cried out when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, what is like this great city? Saying, what is like this great city? So they will be in wonder of the fact that such a great city with such great power, for as long as this generation knows, will be done and over with forever. And remember that we read also that Yahweh will make this happen through the 10 horns of the beast. So it will be the beast, the one that will destroy it. Yahweh will use the beast to destroy the great horde. That is important because that means that her destruction will be clear to the whole world, and even the new world order will be happy with its destruction. So to the people that are in the world and thought that she was great, they will be themselves destroyed in their hearts when they realize that everything is being fulfilled unlike what they were expecting. So, and cried out when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, what is like this great city? And they threw dust on their heads and cried out, weeping and mourning, and saying, woe, woe, the great city in which all who had ships, woe, woe, the great city in which all who had ships of the sea became rich by her wealth. In which all who had ships of the sea became rich by her wealth. That is interesting also, because he's talking about the fact that they were able to create riches, those who had ships, just like when Mashiach came and Peter was on a ship, on a boat, and he was getting riches from the sea through the fishes that he was getting. So we see a connection with the fact that they claim to be they claim that the Pope is the Peter of our time, so as if he was an apostle, and all the popes of the past have been the representation of the Messiah themselves. That's what they claim. And my point is that the Almighty told the disciples that they would be fishers of men, and in that time fishing was, as it is nowadays, also a job, something that somebody would work at in order to bring food to their home. But in this case, Yahushua used the analogy in the sense of bringing life to the heavens, fishers of men, so that men may receive eternal life in the kingdom of Yahweh. So the enemy used that idea, but instead of bringing life to men by taking them out of death and into the kingdom of Yahweh, they use that analogy, but pretty much in a physical sense of actually, making wealth, making money, power through fooling people whom they would fish through their false doctrines. So they used the doctrine of the Messiah, changed it to fool people in order to get power from them, life from them, therefore killing them eventually, either like they did when they would find people reading the scriptures, or like they do when they create poverty, and many other ways in which they actually kill people. So it says, for in 1 hour such great riches was laid waste, and every shipmaster and every passenger and sailors and as many as worked the sea for their living stood at a distance. So a lot of priests, a lot of pastors, a lot of people who were fishers of men, using that doctrine as their hook, they will cry and weep and realize that they were so wrong and so late. So it will be a great mourning for a lot of people. And I repeat, even for those leaders who thought that they were in a true church, when they realized that their whole belief in the spiritual was wrong, and so wrong, imagine how sad they will become. And cried out when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, what is like this great city? And they threw dust on their heads and cried out, weeping and mourning, and saying, woe, woe, the great city in which all who had ships on the sea became rich by her wealth. For in 1 hour she was laid waste. Rejoice over her, O heavens. This is important, I feel, because I have seen how some people, and I say some, but there's a lot of people, have an issue with me having fun when reading the scriptures. And I know it doesn't seem like in English, because I'm a little bit more serious when when I do study in English, because I'm alone right here. And even though you're with me, it's not the same feeling. So I don't have the impulse to do jokes and all of that as I do in the Spanish studies. And a lot of people find an issue with that, because they think I'm making a joke of the Father or the scriptures or the apostles, when I'm not at all. I feel like I'm with the apostle, just making jokes with them as friends. That's what I do. So I enjoy reading the scriptures and finding funny things in the scriptures, for they are so serious, of course. And I know Yahweh created also comedy and sense of humor, and therefore, plus a bunch of other things that he has taught us regarding how we must rejoice and enjoy reading scriptures and getting to know him and all of that. So I do enjoy it. And my point is that not only do I enjoy reading the scriptures and finding certain funny things in the stories that we find in scriptures, but also I find joy in the vengeance that Yahweh will bring. I rejoice in the fact that the enemy will be destroyed, that those who are evil will have to pay. I rejoice in that fact. And people find it bad because they think that I'm like, for instance, if I know a person outside that happens to be Catholic, I'm not hoping for her pain or his pain. No, not at all. I'm rejoicing in the fact that those who fool him or her will have to pay for what they did to her or him. Yet people think that I rejoice in their pain, and it's not at all their pain. Those who have been fooled, I'm hoping they will come out of her. Yet those who have been fooling people, I hope they get their part, which they will. So I rejoice over that fact. So please don't ever misinterpret my joy over the plagues and over all that it will happen. For I also know that all things are for the good of those who love Yahweh. So if all things are for the good of those who love Yahweh, we should try to rejoice in all things. For all things are for the good of us if we love Yahweh. So rejoice over her. Rejoice over her. So I make a lot of songs rejoicing over her being destroyed. And I know a lot of people take that the wrong way. And I know you guys don't, but if anytime you hear somebody or they tell you, because I'm sure somebody will tell you, uh, at least you know my part so that you can tell them. Rejoice over her, O heavens, and you set apart emissaries, and you set apart emissaries or malachim and prophets, for Elohim has completely avenged you on her. So Yahweh is telling his emissaries, his prophets, to rejoice. Yet when people don't rejoice, when they choose to see the scriptures and even the apocalypse as something to be afraid of, sad, worried, that means that the spirit that is within them is not the spirit of Yahweh. It's the spirit that is afraid of the judgment. It's afraid of what they deserve. So sadly, that reaction happens to show what's the spirit influencing them. Because if they're afraid, it's because they don't have the father. Because if a child doesn't have a father, that child will be afraid in the lack of that father. Yet if a child has a father that defends and takes care of him, then that child will be confident no matter what is going around. If he or she sees their father fine, happy, then they are happy. And that is the point. We see Yahweh happy with what is about to happen, rejoicing that he's going to be with us, as we should rejoice that we're going to be with him. So rejoice over her, O heavens, and you set apart emissaries and prophets, for Elohim has completely avenged you on her. Completely. There will be no doubt that she will pay for every single death. And it gets even better. And one mighty messenger picked up a stone like a great millstone and threw it into the sea, saying, with such a rush, the great city of Babel shall be thrown down and shall not be found anymore at all. With such a rush, once again, the rush, one day, but then it is said in 1 hour it came down, and it is repeated and confirmed in 1 hour it came down. And then he says here, with such a rush, the great city of Babel shall be thrown down. and shall not be found anymore at all. What we will find is animals living in those places, unclean animals, for they represent the spirits and demons and fallen angels that will be in those places from that time on. And the sound of harpists and musicians and flautists and trumpeters shall not be heard in you anymore at all. And no craftsman of any trade shall be found in you anymore at all. And the sound of a millstone shall not be heard in you anymore at all. That's also interesting because when Shimshon or Samson was captured, he was used to move one of these stones to prepare the grain, pretty much for the food. However, it is said that that is an euphemism for having sex with the women of that town in order to procreate, according to their his enemies, to procreate a bunch of children that would have his own strength. They wanted a bunch of Samsons going around, so they made him have sex, according to at least Judaism, with the females of of his enemies, pretty much, in order to build an army of people with his strength. So that connects with the great whore in the sense that the great whore does that, uh, sells sex. In the spirit sense, it sells demons, idolatry, which people take as set apart religious rites or deeds. So to find it here is interesting because, well, the stone will be thrown into the water, or the messenger threw that stone to show how fast, how quickly Babel will fall. But then here it mentions, and the sound of a millstone shall not be heard in you anymore at all. There will be no reproduction anymore of that religion, of that falsehood. They won't multiply as they have for 2,000 years, or 1,500 years perhaps. They will not get more food, therefore will die. Another way of seeing it. And the light of the lamp, and the light of a lamp shall not shine in you anymore at all. That's also interesting because we know that Lucifer is like a lamp. Lucifer means light bearer. A lamp has, well, while it works, it has a light. But if it stops working, then it's just a broken lamp. And that is what Lucifer became when he rejected Messiah. Messiah is the light. So when Lucifer killed Messiah, the lamp Lucifer broke and has no light of its own at all. And that's why it says here, and the light of a lamp shall not shine in you anymore at all. For in different religions, there is a lamp shining that Yahweh has allowed for several reasons. But Yahweh will begin to shut that light in every false religion so that they may see the true light. So, and the light of a lamp, meaning also any wisdom, any knowledge, or any truth that may be found in that false doctrine will be taken from it, for it doesn't belong to it. There will be no truth, no counsel found in that church, in that religion, in that knowledge. And the light of a lamp shall not shine in you anymore at all. And the voice of bridegroom and bride shall not be heard in you anymore at all. For it is the union of a male and a female is very important, and Yahweh loves it. For it is like the reunion of Adam and Eve to become one, and Yahweh is one. So it is becoming more like he is. And it is a moment of great joy. Sadly, nowadays, because even of the Catholic Church, a lot of people hate weddings. A lot of people hate weddings because they see them as very boring. I had the pleasure to be at a wedding this last weekend with our sister Nancy right there, and it was a blessing to get to know you personally and your family. They're all great. I love them. So yeah, it was beautiful, and I had a great time. Some jokes and all of that. So as I was saying, a wedding is a great moment. It's a celebration, a great celebration, even though a lot of people don't like it because what weddings and even marriages have become because of the lack of the father. But when it comes to a true wedding, when it comes to true love in a couple, um, Yahweh loves that union, and even the Malachim rejoice. And that is why he mentions this even almost at the very end. And the voice of bridegroom and bride shall not be heard in you anymore at all. They won't be able to unite anything, for they have brought division. They will be divided, they will be destroyed. They won't be able to bring nothing in unity or back together. And also in the next chapter, we read, like we saw Revelation 19, and we will see next week, that the Messiah will marry his wife, the true congregation, the congregation of Philadelphia, the chosen few. So in chapter 19, the true congregation unites with the Messiah. By reading this one chapter earlier, even some verses before what I just mentioned, we see that what this means also is that the great whore, even though she claims to be the church, the congregation, won't be able to unite with the Messiah. So she won't have a head. And that means she will be dead because she won't have a husband, because her supposed husband actually is dead. Well, I should say dead, but I could also say death, because death itself is that angel with whom she is, while claiming to be with life. Since the Messiah is eternal life, the false Messiah is eternal death. Therefore, she is a widow, even though she claims not to be. But when the light shines, she will realize who she is and how she will be forever. So that's why, and the voice of bridegroom and bride shall not be heard in you anymore at all. She won't have any connection with the Messiah, any connection with the truth, any connection with the testimony, any connection with the true congregation. For your merchants were the great ones of the earth, like the leaders, politicians, those owners of the biggest banks of the world. For your merchants were the great ones of the earth. For by your drug sorcery, all the nations were led astray. So glad to read this verse because I was thinking about this yesterday. Let me go to the concordance. If we go to, well, this same verse, but in the concordance, Revelation 18 at the very end, it says, for thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries, which everybody understands as witchcraft, for instance, were all nations deceived. All nations deceived. We just saw how she likes to create riots, like all the riots going around all the world right now, or well, yeah, during this past year, perhaps even 2 years or more, depending on where you live. All nations were deceived by their sorceries. If we go to see that word sorceries in Greek, it is right here, sorceries. It says pharmakia, which is the root of pharmacy. Pharmakia.
Strong's G 5331. Pharmakia. Pharmakia.
In this case, pharmakeia, it comes from that one. Pharmakeus or pharmacus. So anyways, pharmakia, how he said it. So That's where pharmacy comes from, which is huge. Even more when we connect it to our time when they are forcing almost people to get a vaccine, which happens to be filled with ingredients that people should not put in their bodies. And as you guys know, they tend to block us when we talk about it. So I'm trying to be careful. But look at how sorcery in Greek has the same root as pharmacy, which is where people go to get better, to go and get drugs in order to supposedly treat a disease or something, but they are not treating it. They are keeping it so that they can go and buy more drugs and more drugs, for that is the business. That's how they make money, by keeping people sick and keeping them alive yet sick, so that they continue to buy drugs. If they were to heal people, they wouldn't have so much money according to their minds, right? Because of course, Yahweh would give them so much power and success if they were to use it for good, yet they use it for evil. And that evil is creating drugs to make people addicted, to make people buy more and more and more, so that their wallets grow instead of healing people. And that's why it is sorcery, because they are potions made chemically to keep people drugged. And even more when we take it to what they're doing now, when they are offering donuts, hamburgers, strippers, all kinds of things for people to go and get that injection, that sorcery in their bodies. So look how it says, for your merchants were the great ones, like Pfizer and Moderna, and their merchants were the great ones. And I'm sure the Pope agrees with everybody getting it, of course. For your merchants were the great ones of the earth, for by your drug sorcery, for by your pharmakeia, or by your pharmacies, all the nations were led astray. A few years ago, and we know this for a long time ago, and most of it, which I just said, has been happening for hundreds of years. But now this seems amazing. Nowadays, with what is happening, how people are like pretty much going nuts, because those who get it feel superior than everybody else, and see those who don't have it as enemies, even more if they don't want it. And that is going to build up because they are promoting it through TV, through the media and everything else, which I already mentioned. The media is the goddess of illusion. Media. Funny that they call it that. And they broadcast spells with drug sorcery. So they are even clear regarding the words they use. Yet it has been for so long that people don't have the eyes to see it. By your drug sorcery, all the nations were led astray. It's sad, but it's happening before our eyes, and it should be a clear sign that we are close to the end. And also a clear sign that we should be careful about what they are offering. They don't want the good of people. We need to understand that. Cursed is he who may trust in a man. And we are seeing it. Well, if we have eyes to see, and if you have not seen it, then pray to the Almighty to be able to see it and to be able to find the information to run from all the things that they are bringing to the people. So verse 24, and in her was found the blood of prophets and set apart ones. Listen, and of all who were slain on the earth. All who were slain on the earth. So, for instance, the Vatican as a church or as a religion began with Constantine. Like I said, about 1500 years ago, a bit more. So the fact that it says all who were slain means that it cannot be talking to just that which started with Constantine. It's talking to the spirit that began with Nimrod and came all the way to our time. And through it has been killing all prophets, all set apart ones, all who stand for the truth. That's why she is guilty. That spirit, the great whore, is guilty of all who have been slain on the earth. All. That is a lot of guiltiness. And she will have to pay for it. Just like also in the book of Hanok or the book of Enoch, we find that Azazel or Azazel, as some call him, was found guilty of all the sin of the earth. So Yahushua HaMashiach came to pay for all of our sins. And the guilt of all of our sins falls on Azazel, Abaddon, who happens to be the one who will appear on earth as the Messiah, and people will accept him, which is interesting because it is just like when Yahushua appeared before the people. Pilate asked the people if they wanted Yahushua or Barabbas to be released. Bar Abba, which means son of the father. So Pilate asked, you want the son of the father, Yahushua, to go free, or you want the son of the father, who also in Matthew appears as Barabbas Yeshu, or the son of the father Yeshu, which is another important connection. And they asked for Barabbas to be released. Barabbas is Azazel, who is released and accepted by the people, being actually the one who is guilty of all sin, while they reject the Messiah who pays for all sin and brings forgiveness. Just like we see in Leviticus 16, it says, and Aaron shall cast lots for the two goats, one lot for Yahweh, Yahushua, and the other lot for Azazel, Barabbas. And Aaron shall bring the goat on which the lot for Yahweh fell and shall prepare it as a sin offering. Yahushua was offered to Yahweh as a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot for Azazel fell is caused to stand alive before Yahweh. That was Barabbas. That's why he was allowed to be released. And in the sense of what he's saying here, stand alive before Yahweh, it is because Azazel must stand before Yahweh in judgment. Then it says to make atonement upon it, to send it into the wilderness to Azazel. So I'm not going to get into this chapter. I just want to mention how Barabbas and Yahushua were an example of Azazel and the goat for Yahweh. So Yahushua came as the lamb of Pesach and the male goat of Yom Kippur. The other two animals mentioned in this chapter represent the two witnesses who must be killed at the end of the first 3.5 years in Revelation 11. Eliyahu as the ram, the witness like Moshe as the ox. And then Yom Kippur will be completely fulfilled. For once the two witnesses are killed, and Yahushua had been killed already, then the false Messiah will be released into the earth, just like Azazel was released alive. So that's why Azazel will get a body to appear alive on earth and receive worship from the people. So that is the end of the chapter. And in her was found the blood of prophets and set apart ones, and of all who were slain on the earth. So the great whore of Babylon, as the mother of God, is actually guilty of all who have been slain on the earth. And Azazel, who is worshipped as the Christ, is guilty of all sin, according to the book of Hanok, the book of Enoch. So the great whore and her son are actually the ones who will receive all guilt